Are you an overwhelmed SaaS founder ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those you don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where entrepreneurs aren't measured by length or width, but by the scale and creativity of their vision. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you profitably scale from 7 figures, which is really good, to 8 and 9 figures, which is amazingly great. We create premium valuation, profitable growth, and freedom so you build a business you're proud of and create a life that you love. I hope you had a great Easter holiday and really enjoyed that with family. I had some great feedback about the previous episode, faith, pretzels. We got some good feedback on that as well. And Ukraine. So you guys are super supportive. Really appreciate hearing from you. Many of you know I've been in big cities across the world the past few weeks. Notable skylines, Kyoto Tower, Tokyo Tower, Skytree. New York has had a notable skyline for years. It's changed some. Lots of unique architecture and just iconic buildings standing tall and proud against the urban skyline. In New York, I was staying across the street from the Freedom Tower. I mean, straight outside my window and the 2 infinity pools directly down below. It's a magnificent building and just, quite an honor to be there and just to walk there again, read the names around the pools and just remember all that has gone on there. I had some interesting conversations with SaaS founders about building businesses. And we're talking about what makes one company great and another mediocre, one company admired and another, maybe not. I don't know if I want to say another company hated, but there's a little bit of that out there in the world. The subject came up about being surprised that some really notable companies were slashing thousands of employees. And this is in the news. It's, continues on to this day. And we're standing looking out at the skyline from the highest building in the city. And I had a thought. The buildings that we're looking at with their gleaming glass facades and striking architectural designs, it really captures the imagination. And that's what they're designed to do. And it's not unlike the awe-inspiring exterior of a successful tech company. But the strength of a skyscraper or a company isn't just the polished exterior, but it's in the robust infrastructure that underpins it. So no matter how beautiful it is on the outside, the sturdy steel frame of a skyscraper, it's all hidden beneath the surface. But that is what ensures the building's integrity and stability. And that's really true of companies also. In the world of business, this framework represented by a strong organizational culture, dedicated team members, the ability to deliver exceptional value to customers, and solid fundamental economics. A skyscraper can't stand without its steel skeleton, and a business can't thrive without its workforce talent and commitment of its people. And in both of those cases, the inner strength is what determines longevity and success of the endeavor. Use inferior steel or glass or wood or matchsticks, and the structural integrity of the building is completely compromised. The best looking company with a toxic culture and the structural integrity of the entire enterprise is compromised. Build it on a foundation of bad unit economics, hoping that one day it'll grow its way to profitability. Is that structurally sound? Fundamentals matter. And what's on the outside can be shiny and beautiful, but it's what's on the inside that really counts. And as founders, I think sometimes it's hard to see that. We see our own companies, we see the flaws, we see our mistakes, and compare that to the shiny exterior, impressive height, and achievements of others. Just like a skyscraper, businesses must be strong on the inside and not merely just look good on the outside, because that's where the strength and endurance comes from. Get those right, and the outside view will take care of itself. Build for the long term, not for the photo ops and the magazine covers or an external facade. There's way too much of that in the world today. Build for true value, committed teams, unwavering commitment to clients, and the relentless pursuit of excellence every single day. That is the steel infrastructure that makes your business future-proof. Our sponsor today is Champion Leadership Group. Get free growth tools and map out a plan to scale your SaaS business from 7 to 8 to 9 figures. Travel with fellow SaaS entrepreneurs on your growth journey using a proven methodology that is mentor-guided, results-focused, and peer-supported. Celebrate wins and quickly rebound from setbacks. Learn to do the right thing at the right time to achieve profitable growth, impact, and freedom. Unleash rapid growth for your SaaS at championleadership.com. Our expert guest last week was Scott Stouffer, founder and CEO of Scale Matters. He shared how B2B SaaS companies build go-to-market engines that reduce CAC, shorten sales cycles, and drive capital-efficient growth. And that is definitely a word of the day, capital-efficient growth. It was a great episode. Really nice insights and strategies from a multi-billion-dollar SaaS founder. Our founder last week was Luke Homan, founder, CEO, and author of the new book about SaaS pricing that wins called Software Profit Streams. Grab that book if you haven't yet. It's way more valuable than you even expect it to be. And be sure to check out the Profit Stream Canvas as well. It's a great, great tool. So if you missed either of those episodes, go back and give them a listen. It's absolute gold. My guest this week is Bridget Harris, co-founder of youcanbookme.com. She leads a team of 30 people in a multi-million-dollar and multi-million-pound profitable business. That's an important thing. Bootstrap founder, profitable business. 22,000 customers, over 1 million people making bookings every single month. Bridget is a great leader and one of my favorite Bootstrap founders. She is a champion of transparency within the company, internationalism, and a strong company culture at You Can Book Me. Another reason I like her is that, like me, she isn't a technical founder. And unlike me, her expertise is strategic finance and business operations. And those people are absolute gold in business. Well, from across the pond, give it up for Bridget Harris. Well, hey, Bridget, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Thank you, Jeff. Great to be here.
Well, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background and how you came up with the idea for You Can Book Me.
Well, You Can Book Me is celebrating its 10-year anniversary, as it were, for being a scheduling product. And since then, we grew it from scratch, from the first early users who'd never heard of online scheduling or Google Calendar to what we have now. So You Can Book Me has we have over 20,000 customers. We're well into the millions of ARR, 5 million ARR at the moment. And we have around a team of 30 people who are remote, based around the UK, where I am, but also, of course, the US, where you are, but also all around Europe, and indeed, actually, in the African continent as well, which I'm very excited about, Morocco and South Africa. So we're branching out as an international team. Yes, it is. I'm a fully paid up fan of remote international teams. I think they're just really dynamic. They're very exciting to work with as a team. I mean, obviously, it's very hard at the moment because of the World Cup. So we're seeing some of our teams being split down the middle. But we've still got Portugal and Brazil. Morocco just beat Spain last night. So, these are the kind of fun things that you can end up revealing in a company like ours. Yes. And in terms of the company itself, we're bootstrapped. So that means that we've been in business for a very long time, because it takes a long time for a SaaS tool of our self-service, low ARPU, low touch model to get going. And so myself and my co-founder, Keith, who's our CTO, and I'm the CEO, we basically got this whole thing on the road, as I said, about 10 years ago. But prior to that, we'd had other scheduling tools that we built. So we have another scheduling tool that's still out there in existence, although it does need a bit of attention, whenisgood.net, which is another scheduling tool which finds a time for a group of people to meet. So we started with that, and basically You Can Book Me was a pivot out of When Is Good, because You Can Book Me attracted business paying customers, and that's where we sort of followed the money, which again is very instinctive for bootstrappers, because you have to get paid, and so we couldn't sustain tool for very long without actually generating revenue and then ultimately profit.
I think that's a really smart business model. Do you think that the bootstrap companies maybe, get a bad rap, that maybe they're not as serious as the private equity companies or venture-backed companies?
I think you're correct in identifying that's a kind of an insecurity, if you like, that just feels that's out there. And I think it's true that when we started, it was assumed that we would take on VC, and indeed we did. We talked to investors, we talked to angel investors. We were pretty naive about what it was all about, but we certainly had conversations. There was a sort of inference that if you weren't getting VC, it was sort of there was something wrong with you. There must be something about why you couldn't get funding. And I also think that at the time when we were starting off, traditional sources of funding like banks, they weren't interested either, because we also went to the bank to borrow money and they wouldn't lend us money because they didn't understand the recurring revenue model. I'm so happy to say now, 10 years later, the situation has changed dramatically. So first of all, the funding models available for bootstrappers, or people who want to keep a fairly low, who want to only maybe release a small amount of equity in their company. So they might have angel investors or a little bit of seed funding, but that would be it. They can now borrow against their recurring revenue, which we couldn't do 10 years ago. So that means that the opportunities of growing a company and investing and growing fast, if you want to, is within the capability of a bootstrap company. And the second thing is, and this is sort of, I'm not trying to, I'm as sad as everybody about the fact that so many people have lost their jobs in the last couple of years from the tech layoffs. But what you read in the stories of some of those companies, in fact, coming sometimes from the founders or the CEOs themselves, is that they in effect took on investment in order to hire a load of people with the expectation of growth. But they're losing money. And then because of a different economic climate, as we've all been hit with, they realize that they've got too many mouths to feed and they need to lay off. So what we see is this huge tidal, movement of people in and out of the tech sector. And that's very, very much driven by VC capital gain. The idea that you're going to invest and recover your investment through the increased valuation of the company. So that's a very different business model. And, I haven't heard of any there's obviously loads of very large companies that are still bootstrapped. I haven't heard of any layoffs in the large bootstrap companies, but you might be able to correct me, or your community might be able to think of some examples. But my hunch is that the greatest pain is felt by people who took on the greatest risk, which makes sense. That is the model for right. VC. So then the last thing I would say about being a bootstrapper is that, in a way we are below the radar most of the time, because it's not just that people think we might not be a serious business or any other kind of comment. It's that in fact, most businesses are bootstrapped. Most businesses on the high street, most retail businesses, most right. Small businesses, most people who are working for themselves, they are in effect bootstrapped. And at the end of the day, the question is, are you making money? Are you paying for your wages? Can you pay the rent? And that is not an unusual or a peculiar thing. Like, it's a peculiar condition to be a growing software company, SaaS tool, like You Can Book Me, to be bootstrapped. But the vast majority of businesses, people would shrug their shoulders if you said, "Oh, but you haven't taken any outside investment." Debt is the most common financing model inside businesses. And so most bootstrapped companies are below the radar. They just get on with it. They just carry on, building their businesses without really too much of a fanfare, because bootstrap businesses by definition are not in the casino. They're not in the great big casino of VC funded, the incredible stories of putting in 100,000 and getting 100 million out. These are incredibly exciting stories of growth, of investment turning into pots of gold. But we know that story, Jeff, don't we? I mean, that story, that comes from Jack and the Beanstalk. Yes. Jack and the Beanstalk, the magic beans. One of those beans exactly. is going to lead us to the pots of gold. So as humans, we love the stories that tell us that one of us, can win the lottery. And so nobody's interested in the people that just lived in the villages at the bottom of the beanstalk and just got on with it. I think that's basically it.
Well, I absolutely love bootstrap companies, and to think that they're any less than back companies, I think is absolutely incorrect. But that perception is out there a little bit. But you're right. Most companies, amazingly, they have to make a profit. They build a good business based on fundamentals, and it may not be exciting. It may not make big headlines and big splashes, but that's how business works. And so, love bootstrapped entrepreneurs and just the passion behind the projects, and that they do build solid models.
So what I'd be interested in to hear from you, because you speak to many more companies than I do in a position to compare. This is my hunch, which is that I think that it's great to be a bootstrapper for the early years, assuming you can. Obviously, there are some businesses that need capital investment to get going in the first place. It's very hard to start a car making company without getting, an injection of millions of pounds to get the factories going in the first place. So we're obviously in a very particular kind of category that would allow us to do it. But also, I think that very conservative approach in the first early years teaches you a huge amount about the fundamentals of running a business, as you said, and also, really core things like recruitment, just operations generally, because you're counting the pennies. So put it a different way, if you're a first-time entrepreneur and you're just given £2 million in VC and you're told to go and run a company, it's a not surprise that those people might spend a lot of money on a lot of stuff that doesn't make them money in the end, because they don't have that kind of. I learned slowly. I wouldn't have made any better decisions if you'd given me £2 million 10 years ago than anybody else, because you learn slowly, and sadly sometimes you just learn more often by mistake. So putting aside making mistakes and learning that way, I think what it comes down to is risk. And this is the one thing I've identified is different and materially different between a bootstrapped company of a certain size and a VC funded company, which is that the risk profile is different. And some entrepreneurs might be very comfortable, I think I was in this category, very comfortable with taking on the risk associated with my capital, my investment, my decisions. But if you'd given me £2 million, I said, Jeff, I don't want to spend your money. I don't want to take on the risk of losing your money, because it's a different relationship to risk. Are you prepared to lose your money? Are you prepared to lose somebody else's money? And I think, funnily enough, some people prefer to take on the risk of losing somebody else's money than losing their own money, whereas I'm the opposite way around. Have you seen that? Do you identify that in entrepreneurs that you speak to? Like that?
I think that is common. Is that, even people that have had multiple exits before, a lot of times, they won't put their money into a business. They will go out and they'll raise. And sometimes it's really baffling to me. Why would you do that? And ultimately that's it. They want to preserve their own capital and put somebody else's at risk because, they can, and somebody else wants to invest, and, there's the opportunity is there. So, why would they not risk somebody else's instead of, losing their own?
People feel more comfortable being given money and told to go and spend it, that ultimately somebody else is taking that risk of the loss, than if you had £1 million in your bank account, would you then make the same decisions? And I don't know. I do know that there is academic studies. Harvard Business School have looked at this, and it is true that companies that are still run by majority-owned founder shareholders tend to build less valuable companies. So it's a kind of a received wisdom that slightly more accountable decision making, accountable governance can lead to a more successful corporate, commercial entity. Whereas companies that are run by solopreneurs who never stop being the boss of every detail, they're less likely to be successful. But that's not to say that they're not doing exactly what they want to do. It's their business.
Right. Well, I think you do see that some people really do want to risk their own capital, and other ones, even people who have done a successful exit or two before that have the capital, could do it on their own. I've seen them raise. And I always think that's really interesting. You're starting a new venture. You've been down this road before, but they're willing to give up equity and bring in an equity partner at the very, very beginning instead of put their own capital at risk. And I always think that's interesting. They're more willing to spend somebody else's money than their own. So I don't know what that says about the venture.
Well, but then maybe, you see, I think if I was a second time or a third time entrepreneur, I'd probably be a lot more savvy about knowing what I could raise money for and what I would spend it on, because the learning curve of growing You Can Book Me has been so significant. I know obviously so much more now. I know an exponentially, large amount more about running a company now than I did in year one. So, and I think in some ways instinctively, I knew that about myself. I knew that, if I sold a chunk of equity for probably a not very large amount of money, that the value that I got out of that amount in the short term would turn into quite an expensive choice for me, because I would be making not as good, decisions as I would if I had that money given to me now, I think, as a proportion. So many people who can advise entrepreneurs thinking about this. And I think that I'm always happy to talk to other people who are bootstrappers to understand what the risks are, because of course you're putting yourself on the line all the time as a bootstrapper. And, I think, for example, founders do need to appreciate that this is not just a 2-year flip. Running software companies isn't some kind of easy gig that you do in your 20s just to, pay the mortgage and then move on and do something else. For most people, for most of us, this is our lifetime achievement. It takes us years and years to get really good at this and to know what we're trying to achieve and know what we want to do. And so it's so that the sacrifice that might be involved, and I would never recommend people do a massive amount of personal sacrifice, but it does change financial choices. Like, what stage can you get a mortgage? At what stage, are you allowed to go on holiday without your laptop? All these things. And I think sometimes, so whether you do the bootstrap route or you do the VC route, the important thing is to understand how you're drawing boundaries around your business. And I think sometimes having partners with different goals than you, separate capital, separate interests, can sometimes be quite a good way of drawing a boundary, because they've got their interests, you've got your interest. That's a boundary. Whereas if you're just bootstrapped and you're only ever dealing with people who are all in on your business, it's a lot harder to draw boundaries.
And that makes a lot of sense. So longevity is something that you've achieved, and a lot of companies don't. I mean, the 5-year survival rate is not great. The 10-year survival rate is far less than that. What is the secret to really building a company for the long term?
Oh my goodness. I don't know if I could even answer that, Jeff, because I still don't feel like we could fall off a cliff tomorrow. I mean, you don't want to answer, you don't want to suddenly start declaring your success until the end of your life. I think that's what Solon said. I think that I can say that the ingredients of what we have done have been definitely related to the peculiarity of us as founder entrepreneurs and as bootstrappers. You risk a small amount, you gain a small amount. You start to risk a bit more, you gain a bit more. So I think for a long time, we didn't risk a lot. We just let the company move along at its own pace. We hired when we could afford it. We solved a lot of problems in-house. We limited how much money we spent externally. And as a result, we didn't become Calendly. That's the flip side. You can see the story and the trajectory of Calendly from another scheduling tool that launched around the same sort of time. And they've gone, intergalactic, haven't they? They're an amazing company and they've done really, really well. Well, we are not Calendly. So in many, many ways, our longevity was the price of us not wanting to burn ourselves out or take on too much money, too much VC, or start, building out a huge team. We've had a really, really good 10 years. I don't regret a single day of it in terms of my life. But then, so that means that the 10-year building a business hasn't been the only thing I've done, to put it that way. I think that the mistakes that you learn, that you make, because you inevitably make mistakes, it's been a tough journey to realize that you cannot protect yourself from the mistakes you make. Once you've made a mistake, you have to swallow that pain, own it, and respond. And it could be somebody that you hired was wrong, or software that you implemented that was wrong, or a decision that you made that was wrong, or a product feature that you built that was wrong. Something somewhere down the line, you're going to make a mistake which is costly and painful, and you cannot put your head in the sand and pretend it hasn't happened. You have to own what you do And I think that my longevity has been the result of making a proportionally higher number of higher impact, good decisions compared to some of the bad decisions that we've made and the impact that it's had. And that's really what you're going for, is a net gain in terms of good decision making as an entrepreneur. So you have to accept inevitably you're going to make poor decisions at various points. You have to learn why you made them in the first place. You have to minimize your exposure to bad mistakes. You have to minimize exposure to other people making bad mistakes. You have to weigh up the risk of a very expensive, low impact mistake versus a very high impact mistake, even if it's cheap. And you have to try to your error rate for mistakes. You have to look at what your error rate is. And if let's say you are building a product that seems to attract a huge high rate of error, i.e. you don't quite know what you're building, or you're constantly pivoting every 2 months, or you haven't quite understood what your customer needs, or you couldn't describe the problem to somebody, you're prone to be making probably quite a lot of errors. And therefore, you might get a great risk and gain consequence as a result, or you might also burn out after a couple of years. And I think that what we've done is that we've kept pretty steady to online scheduling for businesses. We've prioritized things that are no-brainers, like compliance and security and customer success, and a high-quality product experience. We've prioritized all of that, probably at the expense of, a much bigger sales and marketing budget and kind of bashing it out there and growing. So we haven't grown as fast, but we've stayed in the game for longer. And we've done that over a period of time where we've learned lots of lessons. And the worst mistake we could make is not acting on the basis of the lessons that we've learned. Learn from your mistakes. I think we all do that. Yeah. Learn from your mistakes. It's not rocket science. You have to look in on yourself and realize it's not about you. None of us are messiahs of business. These people that end up crashing and burning from high heights of running businesses. If they've ended up falling foul of the kind of the ego-driven assumption it's because they're brilliant, then that is the biggest trap that you fall into. At the end of the day, every success that we have achieved is because we are a really, really good team. I work with some amazing people, lots of problem solvers, lots of high performers. And as a team, we figure it out and we get the job done. And it's not as exciting as being the messiah of SaaS, but I don't think we could ever claim to. And, and it's just not interesting. You just have to build a really good product and build a good business around it. It's hard work.
Yes. And you definitely have done that. We were an early adopter of scheduling software back in the beginning. And there really were 2, maybe 3 choices. And we went with You Can Book Me. And one of the big reasons was service level. Yeah. And the service level was fantastic. And I think you've spent a lot of time and energy really building those customer relationships. Is that correct?
So that is correct. And I think there's a very instinctive relationship that we have towards our customers. It's not, people talk about it. In fact, in the 1980s, we used to, in Britain, have this kind of cynical reaction to the US corporations like McDonald's talking about the customer's always right. And I think that there was a very kind of cynical backlash of like, well, that's too simplistic a thing. But in fact, having been in business for more than 10 years and having the vast majority of our customers being in the US, the customer is always right because they will vote with their feet if they don't like your product. The only validation we need or have is the fact that customers like our tool and use us. And we're very proud of the fact that even though we're alongside some much, much bigger tools from a financial point of view on G2 Crowd, we're like often the number 1, number 2, number 3 top rated tools on G2 Crowd. And we do that because whenever we send out an email to ask people for reviews, everybody loves us and they come back with 5-star reviews. And it's not accidental. I think that our relationship with our customers is the only thing that matters in any business. And I say this to the team a lot. Everybody knows it. Again, if you're a bootstrap company, it matters a lot about who is paying us. Customers are paying us. Every $10 bill that comes in every month from every customer is a precious $10. That's somebody else's $10. They've given it to us and we need to spend it wisely. And I make the team very accountable for how we handle money. I mean, literally, I'm talking about actual cash in the bank, how we handle money. It's important. It's not a frivolous thing. We are accountable for that contract when somebody gives us money. And that does mean that if somebody, has fallen down a rabbit hole with using the product and they've clicked too many times and they don't know what's going on and their calendar doesn't work and their availability doesn't work, we help them. And we've invested a lot over many years to have high quality support available to all of our customers. And for the free tool that don't get direct email support, we've built a huge community hub where all the frequently asked questions are there, webinars, a massive knowledge base, so that it should be, and we've also tried to make the free tool as simple as possible. So it should be possible to use You Can Book Me for free, and it should be as straightforward as possible. And therefore you wouldn't need human assistance. Whereas for a lot of the customers that are paying us, it's by definition, they're paying because they're using multiple calendars, customizable features, reminders, all sorts of other things, integrations. So if they do have questions, we need to be available to help them. And it matters because we often can be the canary when Google Calendar, Google goes down or some other major titan of third-party supplier in our stack has a problem. We will hear it first because if You Can Book Me isn't working, oh my goodness, hundreds of people will suddenly be within minutes will be emailing us. So we need to be ready. And we've thought an awful lot about it. The whole company is orientated around all hands support. People from different departments will do tickets. When we're all together as a team, we'll do tickets. But we've also actually taken on third-party partners now, sort of basically a dedicated expert team who are trained to do You Can Book Me so that we can offer a better range of time zones and ultimately language support, because it will continue to be a bedrock for us, which is our relationship with our customers.
How do you think that UI and UX has changed and evolved over the last 10 years?
Well, mobile is the big one. And impatience, because the human brain hasn't evolved much, but the human brain was so much faster than technology. I think 10 years ago or 15 years ago, we were probably still happy to handle, dial-up Wi-Fi and all the other kind of crazy stuff. But nowadays, human brains want it fast, want it immediate, want it on their smartphones, and they want it to be reliable. And I think that the UX, UI, what we are working towards, in fact, we're right in the middle of a significant rollout of the new version of You Can Book Me, is we have dedicated a lot of work around making our UI as sort of fast and as intuitive as possible. We're also very proud that our design team have achieved WCAG AA accessibility guidelines for our booking experience. And I know for a fact not many scheduling tools do it, because accessibility is seen to be sort of a nice to have sometimes in some software systems. In fact, we have put it at the core of the experience for any user. So that has to be people on screen readers, people who are using voice activated interactions with the software. So we've done that as well. And we've also, I think now we're in a world where UX is not seen as, it's certainly 10 years ago, we didn't talk about UX. We didn't know what UX was. We just wanted it to be easy to use. We just this has got to be easy to use. I think now everybody understands that you solve an awful lot of problems at the very heart of what you do if your design is right, because then you don't have support burden because people don't understand your design and they can't find the drop down, or you don't have engineering refactoring because the product was built in a way that is then hammering a certain way of use case that needs to be fixed through engineering. In fact, your design and your UX is at the heart of building a product that people want to use.
I think that's really smart. And you're correct. It wasn't something that was even a thought then. There was design, but maybe UI and user interface, that was something that we talked about, but that really does drive user experience. And that's where, you see the feedback in like your G2 reviews. So if it's a great experience, you'll see it there. And if it's not a great experience, it's really easy for people to let that be known also.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And people take it personally. Like when you're using the tool and you can't find a thing and you're always trying to find a thing, it's annoying because it's like a nagging pain in your everybody finds it irritating. And then what happens is this really weird phenomenon where people then adapt to bad UX and they get used to working their way around a bad interface. And then you change it and then they're annoyed because like, oh, but I always go to the top right-hand corner and I click on that and then I search and then I always get the thing that I want. And now I don't know where to find it. So you're in a sort of an ongoing love-hate relationship with your users, people who they hate the way it is, but they love it because they know how to do it, because they're not interested really in your software. They're interested in solving their problem and they're interested in speed. And so speed for them can sometimes be their personal shortcuts that don't apply to anybody else. So you inadvertently sweep away something that they've been using as a shortcut for speed. So you have to re-educate them that there's going to be a quicker way for them to do it. Better still, for them to actually not even notice that the shortcut isn't there anymore, because whatever it is, whatever job that they're trying to do, the jobs to be done thesis, it serves them. And we're by no means perfect at all, but it is something that we are essentially a product engineering and operations company. That's what we have excelled in. That's what we do really well. We are not a sales and marketing company. So I don't know, you can go and ponder on that, Jeff, but that's what I know. What we're really good at is the people in our team that have invested their time in making it good.
That's a really good thing. And I've experienced exactly what you're talking about. I mean, specifically Microsoft Office and updates, and you use it for a long time and then an update rolls out and it's supposed to be better, but I can't find anything anymore.
No,
and so that's happened a couple of times. And it's like, do I ever want to update again? I don't know. But that happens. And so just because we think it's better doesn't necessarily mean it's a better user experience. But yeah, I love that you're really focused in heavily on that.
Mm-hmm. What you have to try to do is ride on the basis of familiarity. So when people are familiar with the way something is supposed to, so it's not an accident that, let's say, Google Sheets actually follows a lot of the UI prompts of Microsoft Excel, because they were never going to get Excel users to use Google Sheets unless there was a quite a significant crossover of terms and uses. So you can't invent the wheel and say nobody wants new and exciting stuff inside software when they're just functional software, when they're trying to do the job. The social media companies have the opposite problem, of course, because they are invested in novelty, and novelty is what keeps eyeballs on their apps. Whereas as productivity software, we are invested in problem solving, in people solving the problems. And, for that, we cannot mess around too much with what we do.
That's interesting. Really just understanding what the problem that you solve, understanding your market, and what is it that they're looking for. Do they want new innovation all the time? Do they want novelty? Or do they want an experience where they go and they do their thing and they get that outcome quickly?
Yeah. And I think that this is the kind of discussion that anybody in the early stages of an MVP or looking for product market fit, these are the kind of dimensions that they need to really deep dive in, because I've always thought my theory about my philosophical theory about product invention is you've got, in terms of the internet, is that you've only got two types of problem. You've got problems that existed before the internet that the internet is now solving, web development is now solving, or you've got problems that only existed because the internet was born. So, for example, I don't know, the best example is bus timetables. Bus timetables has always been an issue. What time does the train or any other kind of transport timetabling? Now we don't think about it because we can get timetables online super easily. Even Google Maps will tell you the timetables of a local bus, which is amazing. Right. Whereas before you used to have those little booklets and they'd come out every 6 months and there'd be a new booklet and you'd have to kind of look down to find your bus. So that is a fantastic example of how the internet has just solved an existing problem in a fantastic way that we take for granted now. Whereas, I don't know, social media, maybe photo sharing is a bad word, but social media networking, the kind of entertainment and world that you get, particularly in the social media apps, these are all problems that we didn't have before. VR, for example, the metaverse, we didn't have that problem before. We have an actual reality. So you're in a much higher, you're in a steeper climb when you're trying to convince people that they have a problem and then solve it for them. And of course, that if you do manage to do that, you that is the world of generational invention, because then you've identified something which is the cross between the horse and the car. People, if you ask for horses, this is the famous example, obviously, people would just ask for faster horses. You have to give them a car and they wouldn't even know that cars existed. And that's what the internet does. It offers this opportunity for solutions that people literally cannot imagine that they would use. I think you can book me in our scheduling space. We are in very, very old-fashioned territory. What time should we meet? We have that all the time. What time should we meet? We did it. I scheduled you to have this podcast call. As you said, you can book me in the early years. People are using these things because they have this problem. It exists with or without the solution.
And it's definitely a problem that you solve well, and something that is so needed, so much more convenient than the old way. And I like that, the bus timetables. That's how booking a meeting used to be. It was back and forth. And now it's, here's my link, find a time that works, done.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's a beautiful, beautiful experience.
Yeah, exactly. Fun as well. It's fun to be booked, to get a text.
That's right. Well, where can people find out more about you and about You Can Book Me online?
Well, we are the company is youcanbook.me or ycbm.com is an easier URL to remember. ycbm.com. Me, I'm Bridget Harris, and I'm on LinkedIn. It's my only online profile that I'm now on. But I'm very happy to connect with people on LinkedIn if they hear the podcast. It'd be lovely to get any questions or thoughts that they've got. Reach out anytime. It's great. I'm at conferences as well, Jeff, as you know. I like speaking at different SaaS conferences, both in the US and in Europe. And it's always great to meet other entrepreneurs, people who've got different journeys and different questions. And anything I can share that will help somebody else's journey, I'd love to do it.
And you're a fantastic speaker as well. Seeing you. And it's fantastic.
Thank you. It's good to talk to you.
I've really enjoyed having you on the podcast, Bridget. So thank you.
And likewise, Jeff. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks again to Bridget for coming on the show and sharing your journey and insights with us. You can learn more about Bridget and You Can Book Me at ycbm.com. Or my favorite is youcanbook.me. Really simple. I like that URL a lot. All links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. Please subscribe and follow us there on your favorite platform. Everyone who subscribes this week gets an extra 15 minutes added to your day to do something fun. You aren't allowed to book a meeting during that bonus time. Even if you use youcanbookme.com, no meetings during your bonus 15 minutes. There you go. You're welcome. But join us next time on our SaaS Fuel Expert series for a great conversation with Jeremy Redmond, CEO of Task Magic. From a trailer park to Sunset Boulevard, Jeremy has built 3 6-figure and 1 7-figure no-code tech companies from nothing. Thursday is also the 1-year anniversary of SaaS Fuel. So I'm really excited about that. And we made it 1 year and are going really, really strong now, 2 episodes a week. And we'll see you next time on Thursday for our 1-year anniversary. As always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.